The invasion of Ukraine has brought sanctions and economic isolation to Russia, halting the era of globalization Russians enjoyed after the end of the Soviet Union. Countries have gone from little integration with the global economy to becoming closely integrated. However, this might be the first time a country's inhabitants have experienced an abrupt end to globalization after enjoying it for many years. To better understand the impact of this monumental change, I interviewed Brian D. Taylor, a professor of political science at Syracuse University and the author of the highly acclaimed book The Code of Putinism. Stuart Anderson, can you explain what Russia's participation in the global economy looked like prior to the breakup of the Soviet Union? Brian D. Taylor, during the Soviet period the country's economy was peripheral to the global capitalist economy, despite being one of the two superpowers. Soviet-style centralized planning was premised more on autarky, or economic self-sufficiency, than on participation in global trade and financial flows. Most Soviet exports to the outside world were natural resources, and they used the proceeds to buy food and industrial equipment. Anderson, after the fall of communism, particularly in the past 10 years, what did globalization look like for many Russians and Russian companies, i.e., travel, access to Western luxury goods? Taylor, the collapse of the Soviet Union marked the return of Russia to the global economy. The early Russian economic reformers understood that only through exposure to international competition and opening up to international trade could Russia make the transition to a modern capitalist economy. For average middle-class Russians, this meant the opportunity to buy foreign clothing brands, consumer electronics, foodstuffs, and so on. Russian companies became much more integrated into international trade and capital markets. And tens of millions of Russians could travel overseas. Anderson, how do you think Russians are going to feel being cut off from globalization after experiencing those benefits for so many years? Taylor, being cut off will be easier for some and devastating for others. Only around 30% of Russians have international passports. Poorer Russians in rural areas and small towns already are largely cut off from globalization and its benefits. For younger and better-off urbanites, the ability to renovate their apartments at IKEA, stream Netflix on their iPads, and easily hop on a plane to Europe or Asia is fundamental to their identities. All of this will become much harder now given the massive economic shock that Russia will experience. Anderson, in your book, you define Putinism. What is Putinism, how did it influence the invasion of Ukraine and how will it potentially decide the course of future events? Taylor, I argue that Putinism is a mentality shared by Putin and his close associates, what I call Team Putin.